will be recorded, and I ask you to note that mobile phones should be switched off as they interfere with the recording. Tablet devices should be switched to mute, and I remind members to declare their interests as appropriate throughout the meeting. Can I advise members that the meeting will move into closed session towards the end to consider the terms of reference for the committee review on better regulation. Can I declare the meeting open to the public? Agenda item 1, apologies. We have an apology from Tom Elliott. Is there any other apologies? Maybe the committee should I convey my congratulations to Tom Elliott on being elected to Westminster. And is it in order for the committee to?
Could I second that, Chair? I think he'll be an excellent voice for us over in Westminster.
Now you can welcome Joanne back to the committee, even though she told us she was leaving us, but to welcome back.
Temporary.
Agenda item 2, Chairperson's business. Can I advise that the invitations to the Dard Breakfast event, the Balmore Show, have now arrived and will be distributed today to those members who indicated that they would be attending. I think Kieran's the only member that's not attending Dard Breakfast. Expenses claim forms are also being distributed for mileage and parking fees, and please keep a parking ticket for any reclaim. And I advise members that both I and the Deputy Chairperson will be meeting the Minister on Monday the 18th of May to discuss the proposed cuts to AFBI. I will update members on the outcome of the meeting in due course. Can I advise members that the joint meeting with the ETI Committee has been agreed for the 9th of June at 12:30 p.m. That is the day that we anticipate the further consideration stage of the Reservoirs Bill. Can I suggest that we ask research to provide us with a paper which outlines looking at the progress report on Growing for Growth with a focus on actions relating to Dard Data and associated agencies bodies over the 2014-15 period. Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting 21st of April 2015. Can refer members to the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of April 2015 at pages 7 to 10. Are members content that the draft minutes are accurate? Okay, members? I will then sign. Okay. Agenda item 4, matters arising. Can I refer members to matters arising at pages 14 to 29? Are members content to action matters arising as suggested on the index sheet at page 13? Okay, members. Move on to agenda item 5. We have an oral briefing from Forestry Service on the business plan. Can I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 31 to 33 and papers from the department at pages 34 to 57. Can I welcome Malcolm Beattie, Chief Forestry Officer, and Marcus Macaulay, Corporate Service Director. Can I ask you to take up to 10 minutes for your briefing, and we will then ask some questions.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Just maybe say there may be a division. We're told now at 1:45, so
okay,
it could be possibly we could have to break for that. Okay.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chairman, to present the Forest Service business plan. A budget of 14 million of current expenditure and 2.5 million of capital expenditure. For that, I intend to produce another 100 hectares of new woodland, 400,000 cubic metres of timber, and when that ends up in the sawmills, that'll produce 32 million for the local sawmills in value. Our forests routinely attract over 4 million visits each year, and that, I'm told, is worth over 10 million on expenditure by the people who visit, so we provide that as well. We provide a protected landscape for wildlife. Reply to a recent question, there's something like over 14,000 hectares of forest protected for hen harrier, merlin, birds of special interest. Other forests protect things like pearl mussel and red squirrel. The agency now also looks after plant health, and so we'll be providing protection against plant pests and diseases. We intend to develop the land for wind farms, and we have a target this year of 100 megawatts to come into development or yet in the planning stage, and that's equivalent to 40 turbines. And we also will provide assurance that our forests are sustainably managed, and by that we mean we provide, through independent audit, our timber is able to be marketed under the Forestry Stewardship Council logo, and that's a trademark which is very valuable to the sawmills. There are some long-term risks, of course, to our aims. Forestation, of course, is 100 hectares is not going to be at the rate that's needed to achieve the long-term aim of 12% of woodland. I'm afraid that really depends on the appetite for land use change by landowners, and I don't really see much change in there in the near future. Sustainable forest management has a risk, and that timber supply after 2030 is at risk. Production will probably decrease, and that presents a risk then to our major customers. Disease, of course, is creeping up the agenda. There are issues about regulatory change, about trade, and about pests moving with climate. Climate gets a bit warmer, and that gives us both the difficulties of managing the pests and also what species we plant in our forests as we cut them down. On recreation, we're doing a lot of work with our delivery partners, particularly the councils, and I hope that their appetite to continue doing that will be maintained. On the forests themselves, there are some fairly major risks around soil fertility. About half of our forests are on deep peat, as I mentioned previously. Those forests themselves suffer from low fertility, and there are issues of water quality and biodiversity to face as well. So that's pretty much the plan that we have this year, and I'd be very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your Stephen. Can you take me through your budget? As on page 17 of your papers, it would appear that forestry services facing a reduction in the budget, but that is partially offset by an increase in receipts. Nevertheless, it's obvious that you were going to face a reduced budget. Can you give us some detail on how you propose to manage that?
Yes. We actually got a slightly larger addition to our salaries line, and that's to deal with our plant health responsibilities. Our budget has taken a notional hit because of the voluntary exit scheme, so we've had to make allowance for that. Whether that transpires or not, we just have to wait and see. Certainly, staffing issues will be a fairly major issue for us this year. We will expect to lose some very experienced staff. We have plans to increase the resource we can put on the plant health side. We want to make some step changes on how we do things. So you're quite right. There's an issue there around the budget. That said, I actually think we've come out pretty well, and the department's been good to us, given us the resource that I think we need. We'll fund that by increased receipts in part, and we don't intend to produce any more timber, but the price of timber has gone up in recent years, so we take advantage of that well.
That's good. On the voluntary exit scheme, are you aware of how many staff have applied for that scheme and how many staff you need to address the shortfall? Many do you?
I know how many of my staff have applied. It's not certain they will be given that, because it's at the very least a departmental decision who will get to go or not. The need I will have is on the plant health side, and that's really for people from the agriculture inspectorate grades, and that would involve an inward movement from somewhere else in the department. That's how I see that working out.
Okay. Joe Byrne.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Welcome the presentation and the papers. Welcome. In terms of where we're at now as compared with 10 years ago.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yes. Making a contrast between where we were 10 years ago against where we are now. Have we expanded or not the total amount of land under
yes.
solar?
In round terms, it's about another 1,000 hectares, so it's gone up. When we became an agency, we were planning around, or the data told us about 5% of the country was under trees. We know when we resurveyed, we found actually it was 8%, and we know that 1% of that came from additional planting, and another 2% came from land that had been converted to trees naturally. Now that's telling us a lot about farming and less about forestry. So if you like, there is a movement in the amount of tree cover, but the real issue is whether that's going to be useful and productive trees, or is it simply a scrubbing up. That's not to say it's not useful, it's good for the environment, but that's the limit of it. It will not produce timber, and it's of doubtful value if it's used for recreational or of sporting use.
So the objective is to try and get to 12%
Yep.
of land use for forestry. Can this be done with you being a state agency, or do you have to have some sort of partnership approach with the private sector, i.e. the private landowners?
Our approach at the moment has been to try and incentivise the private sector to do that. We're not aware that the rate of grant is a hindrance at the moment, but we're not allowed to provide profit for that. We help people with their costs, and that seems to be all right. I think the real issue for the private sector is land is used for farming, and farming obviously pays better than trees and always will do. So I think that's a real dilemma. And for the landowners, we're not putting pressure on landowners. If landowners want to plant trees, we will support them, but there's no pressure on them to do it if they really don't want to.
Well, about 20 years ago, there were tax incentive schemes for people to participate in forestation schemes. Is that still in existence? Is it likely to come back or not?
There are forests get the same tax advantage as farmers. The schemes you're talking about ended about late 80s, but they're really aimed at people who are paying maybe 90 pence in the pound income tax. Well, the income tax rates themselves have changed, so it was the super rich and people planting huge areas that was targeted at. That never happened. It's never much of an issue here, simply because our land holding was much smaller. Is that a signal for you folk?
And lastly, what proposals does Europe have in relation to forestry and the timber industry going forward? Or do they have one, and do we integrate it or not?
At the European scale, forests are plentiful. So the Europeans will see the issue in forestry being about sustainable forestry, making sure they're there for the next generation, and about multiple use. So we could get it for timber at one point, and before we do that, we get all the recreation and environmental benefits. So Europe is very concerned about climate change, how tree species are adapting or not adapting, particularly in the southern member states, as to how the species will replace themselves.
And lastly, Chairman, on wind energy, you're obviously expanding a lot the whole wind energy angle of your business. In 10 years' time, what sort of annual income do you expect to have coming in from wind turbines? I take it there's some sort of modelling being done.
There's modelling being done at the moment. We're aware of some regulatory changes which may threaten that, and the modellers are struggling with that. So we move from a very subsidy-dominated scheme to one much more open to the market. That said, I think it would be premature for me to give you a figure, but we would not be doing it if we didn't think it was worthwhile.
Well, help me, what's the current annual income?
Say again?
What's the current annual income?
Forest Service are getting very little at the moment. We don't have any turbines in our land at all. So going forward, I mean, that's what the modellers should do, is actually work out what it's worth to us.
Okay, members, we'll have to break for the division. Okay, for 5 minutes. Okay. The next member wants to question is Oliver McMullen. Oliver.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Just two quick things under tourism and recreation. Congratulate you on what's going on in Glenara Forest Park. How are we getting on with the caravan park and opening that whole place up for recreation? Because it could be one of the gems of tourism if we get it done right.
Yes, that's one of the exciting things we hope to conclude this year. We intend to spend another, lots of £1 million, I suppose, on the recreation side, and a lot of that's going into Glenariff to finish off the caravan site. We expect that to be finished really in the autumn time. In parallel to that, we need to talk to the council and make sure there's the plan to take that forward and make sure it's, caravan site has to be managed. Somebody's got to produce the visitors, and we need to talk to the council and make sure that happens.
And there's no problem with the new council. You're working with Moyle before, now it's the new one.
I'm not aware of any problems. Of course, it's early days, and the council have got lots of other things to do. But we will have meetings fairly soon with the officers and just check everything's on course.
And the last question is, I noticed in your report there, one of the other things you're looking at is the alternative energy, wind farms. How are you going to liaise with the community on this here, local communities here, to get them to buy in, or the benefits to local communities?
Yep. One of the minister made I think an answer to a question on this, that her position is that the community side of this is really at the top of her agenda. It's one of the main reasons why she wants the forest to be used to start delivering these community benefits. We've had the advantage of some consultancy work, really checking out what best practices in other places. Some talking to stakeholders here, and there are, as you'd expect, different views on this. It will fall to us to actually start to engage with them once policy decisions are made as to how to take it forward. But for sure, it'll depend on meeting people on the ground, making sure people understand what the process is, making sure what to expect and what not to expect. And it's not going to happen everywhere. Maybe that's the first thing to say. We have targeted megawatts, that's 40 turbines this year, give or take. So, like Tollymore, Castlewell, we're not talking about those kind of places. We're talking about places that are beside existing wind farms, places where people are ready, there are already wind farms in existence, and people have some experience of what goes on there. And then we have to engage those and work out just how we make community benefits available and at what scale. So a lot of work to be done.
When do you think that will be completed, so we have an idea where what communities are going to benefit or be involved in it? It has to be really this autumn. Right. It can't be much longer than that, otherwise we're simply not going to deliver our programme this year. We want to make progress in this. There's some big risks. I mentioned also the changing market for energy, and of course, if you can't sell the stuff, there's no benefits of any sort. So to work through all of that. And what's the position on the telecommunications tower in Glenara Forest? Has the people now pulled out?
We've received notice from the current occupier that they intend to give up their lease on that. So that leaves the way clear for us to negotiate then with anybody who else wants to provide the service. So that's open, and I would expect progress on that.
We have interest in people taking it over?
I'm aware. I think so, yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Kieran McCarthy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for your presentation. We were interrupted with the vote, but you were answering Joe, and I didn't quite catch what your answer was, but I'm reading your strategic aims is to earn over 9 million from forestry resources and progress on what we're just talking about there. You said to Joe that we weren't making money, did you?
We weren't making money in wind farms. We haven't. All of that 9 million is mostly from timber and some recreation. All right. Wind farm is for the future. And what Mr. Bernard just asked me, what's the kind of typical money you would get for a wind turbine? I see. And a quick phone call told me the numbers are around about 20,000 at the moment. The market is changing, so I have no idea what that will be in the future, but that's what we're modelling at the moment.
Yeah, but that 9 million is mainly for trees. And
that's trees, yeah.
And just on the trees, you're reduce the threat from new and emerging plant disease. Have we overcome the ash dieback?
No. We've got another year's grace from the European Commission to actually carry on our surveys. This is a disease which, in experience in other places, tells us is very persistent and very infective. So 1 year's freedom doesn't prove anything, it just means it hasn't established yet. So we really need to go through the rest of this year before we're convinced we're free of it. So
is that Northern Ireland? What about across the border?
The south. We're doing this jointly. They're surveying theirs, we're surveying ours.
Okay, that's all right. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. In mentioning ash dieback, subsidence went quiet, and that's good. Our neighbours in the Republic, have they any?
It's quiet because it's been autumn and winter.
Yes.
Now we're getting into leaf again. We'll both be surveying, and no guarantees in this. We just have to see what we see.
Yeah, because it's very difficult to see in the winter time, I suppose, if it was there. Yeah. Fully understand. Yeah. So.
Just on that subject again, what's the cost with the fact of we haven't got to grips with it yet? as you're saying there, Malcolm, as we go forward. But is there likely to be a big costing in relation to
There certainly is. There's a significant cost. I can't remember the figure we gave last year. If I say $500,000, that's the figure I have in mind. Don't hold me to that. That's what it's costing the survey each year. If you want, I can come back and give you an exact figure, but that's the figure I have in mind. Biggest issue is that's coming out of resource that I need to do other work.
Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from here.
Yeah,
and
so
you really don't really know the effects of it going forward. It could be more or less than what it was before. We don't know that.
Yes.
I think I'll be getting on top of this, or
it's one of these things, you know, that if it flares up, you have to deal with it where it flares up, and that could be a big thing or a little thing. It just depends how big the outbreak is. But also this thing, we're at the stage of saying, look, if we got multiple breakouts, would we do anything? Or we say, look, game over. That's the kind of territory we're in at this stage. Neither of us, north or south, want to waste resource on this. We want to combat it and we want to get rid of it if that's feasible. But we're not in the game of squandering resource on this because there's too many other things to do. And not least, you know, inspections of farms, making sure potatoes are certified, all those normal things that have to go on. So, you know, it's tricky.
and it does affect your resource.
Oh, absolutely. There is no more resource, so we do what we can do with.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, for many of us on the ground that's not fully affair with the disease, one would automatically think because everyone's quiet that we're out of the danger, but that's not the case.
It's like your doctor says, I haven't seen anything yet. Yet.
Yet.
Can I ask, how did you manage to get away with a very small reduction in your budget? I mean, was it $500,000? Is that what I?
We've taken a $500,000 cut our pressure from the department. It's because of the voluntary exit scheme. That's just shared out over all business areas. I have no idea whether £500,000 worth of staff will leave in my business area or not. Right. That's just something you've got to put it in the figure somewhere. So we've taken that. But
you got off relatively easy compared to other departments.
Well, in fact, the forest bit has been increased because we need to increase the resource on plant health. I need to do more. I need really to get ourselves from a very reactive situation to one that does a lot more planning. We start to use more technology. The Minister announced the other day the use of an app, and that's what our folk have been doing, is trying to work the technology so people can help us. But that costs a bit of effort. You need that sort of resource to think and design and plan. So that's what the budget's for.
Good luck. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay. So, is that everyone? Okay. Can I thank you very much for your presentation, and again, thank you. Okay.
Keep growing the trees.
We'll do our best. Come and visit them.
Feeding the birds now, yeah.
Move on to agenda item 6. We have an oral briefing from Dard on the Fisheries Industry Task Force. I refer members to the memo from the clerk at pages 59 to 62 and papers from the department at pages 63 to 83. Can I welcome John Spears, Paddy Campbell, thank you, Alan McCullough, Dick James, and we have Daniel Whittle. So we have can we ask you to take up to 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll ask some questions?
Chairman, it's unlikely to take that length of time, so just as a short sort of introduction by way of background context.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to update the committee on the work of the Fishing Industry Task Force. We're delighted to be here this afternoon. As you're aware, the task force was set up by Minister O'Leil last summer to examine future challenges facing the offshore fishing industry and to make recommendation on the actions required to help deliver a more sustainable fishing industry into the future. The task force drew its membership across a range of stakeholder interests, and it has enjoyed a high level of engagement from active fishermen in the catching sector, the prawn and pelagic processing sectors, fisheries scientists and economists, and the producer organisations. So it's entirely right and appropriate that the three industry members of the task force, Alan McCullough, Dick James and Daniel Whittle, have been able to join the committee today and contribute to the discussion. The task force is an important channel for the fishing industry itself to look at the concerns to be addressed, and in the short time it's been active, it has proved to be a valuable forum for considering short and longer-term strategic fishing industry matters. The work of the task force over 5 meetings in the first 6 months focused on the most immediate and urgent challenges, and the task force presented its interim report to Minister O'Neill in December last year. The Minister subsequently published this in the new year. Amongst the urgent priorities identified in this report was the recommendation for a programme of work to address issues surrounding the implementation of the landings obligation as part of CFP reform, progressing the arrangements for the next European funding scheme, EMFF, to provide appropriate financial assistance for the industry. And I'm aware that following the task force session, my colleague Ronnie McBride is here to give a brief update on EMFF. Other urgent priorities were to examine the economics of the local catching sector with an immediate focus on assessing the economic impact of the landing obligation, prioritising a series of fisheries science projects, and agreeing and deploying an agreed set of principles for the annual round of negotiations on quotas, which takes place at December Fisheries Council. I'm aware that you'll have received a copy of the task force interim report, and also a short page-and-a-half progress report, which outlines where we stand in terms of those various work streams. And at this stage, Chairman, I'll pause, because I think it's probably best if we answer any questions that you and the committee may have. So thank you.
Okay. Can I refer to page 10 of your interim report and paragraph 411? Members will find it on page 72 of the pack. That paragraph notes that sea fishers are carrying out UK economic impact assessment of the land obligations. Early indications were not good for our fishing fleet. This sounds like perhaps the most serious threat to our fishing industry. Can you tell me more about this, and how do you intend to tackle it?
The organisation Seafish have been carrying out a range of assessments of the impact of the landing obligation on the fishing industry across the UK. They've also, as indicated in the task force report, been looking at specifically the impact of the landing obligations in Northern Ireland. What they've done is they've looked at the different quotas that are assigned to the Northern Ireland industry across the different species, looked at the landings and the catch composition of the characteristics of our fishing industry, and undertaken an analysis of what that would mean if we were required to land everything we catch. In particular, those species where there is a lower level of quota, what impact that would have on the main target species, which is prawns. And the analysis they've done is quite concerning, that if we do nothing, and there's nothing to be done on the gear selectivity, reducing unwanted catch. There's nothing to be done in respect of flexibility within the obligation to land. Then the indications are that there would be certain species would act as what they call choke species, which once the quota runs out, the fishery for our main species that's targeted would then have to close. So that's the concern in brief arising from this. I don't know whether others from the industry might want to add to that observation.
It's difficult at the moment to basically see what the conclusion of this would be, that they've actually done 2 final interim reports, they've called them, and they're yet to be final as far as I can see, because the figures they've used are in question. The actual stark headline, I think, is that whiting in the Irish Sea would be our main choke species, and when we've caught all our whiting, the fishing would stop. and their reports calculates that we've got 3 days fishing for the year when this comes in. So that's pretty stark.
Right.
I think, Chairman, as well, it's worth noting that everybody has been struggling in terms of what the landing obligation will actually mean in practice. We have the headline view, which was communicated to us in the reform of the Common Fisheries Policy. But of course, as so often is the case from legislation from Europe and elsewhere, how that's actually interpreted, how it's implemented at the end of the day is something else. So we're only actually getting to the stage now when we know the detail of what implementation will be. So it's only when we know that detail can we really make a decision as to what the consequences could be for the industry and what we have to do between now and the end of this year.
For instance, has AFBI all the necessary scientific expertise in place to deliver the recommendations in the overall report, for example, on the land obligations, on the gear selectivity, on the cod assessments?
The nature of fisheries business and fisheries policy and negotiation is highly dependent upon scientific evidence and information. So we work very closely with AFBI scientists, and they have a range of expertise that we can draw upon. The work of the task force recently has tried to prioritise the most important science and research that is needed to inform policies moving forward. And we've come up with a range of different science and research projects that we have commissioned AFBI to deliver. So yes, we work very, very closely with AFBI, and they have responded most effectively to the requests from the task force, and they are represented on the task force as well.
Do you believe they have the necessary scientific expertise?
I do, yes.
Do?
Yes.
Okay. Kieran McCarthy.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for your short presentation. And I must say at the outset that I sit on the Health Committee, and more occasions than I like to report, when the reports has been done and reviews has been done, there's never or very seldom representatives of, I'm thinking, and the nurses been on that committee, but I'm delighted to say that you have got good representations on this committee, and I look forward to hearing what both Dick and Al will tell us, because they're the guys that's on the job. The other thing is, I think, Chair, before we go on, I must, pass comment on almost the tragedy that was in Kilkeel with the submarine or whatever it was. I don't know that anybody has established who it was or what it was, but lives could have been lost, and it done nothing for the fishing industry, I'm sure. For young people who will be looking, why should I go there if they're going to be, our boats are going to be torpedoed by God knows what. So if you can take that back to Kilkeel, Alan.
It's Ardglass, actually.
Sorry, Ardglass. There you go. But anyway, I'm looking at the report you've given us here on how the progress has been, and there's one or two things that there's number two. First of all, I'm glad that you have the department has accepted the 12 recommendations. That's a start. Number two, there, the survivability of the Nethrops in the Nethrops should be further investigated. Now, that will be assessed, and the feasibility will be 2015. Is there any further progress that you can tell us today, the committee, that there is a positive future coming from the Nethrops, for instance, the prawns?
Well, this one, Mr. McCarthy, is to do with one of the exemptions that's under the landing obligation, that if you can prove that a fish species survives the fishing operation to a high degree, you would still be allowed to put it back into the sea. Now, what people are finding, and several member states are looking at this with various fisheries, but we can make a very good case for example, pot caught Nethrops in the Bankford Loch, for example. So you would get survivability rates of Nethrops caught in a pot of over 80–90%. So what it means is we'll get an exemption in there for the pot fishermen, that if they catch some Nethrops that are undersized in their pot, they can put them back. They don't have to land them. So that's a good thing from them. Unfortunately, for the survivability of Nethrops in a prawn trawl when it's hauled up from the depths, There'll be over several hours towing. The survivability at the moment is around about 10%. So we reckon to make a successful case there, it's going to have to be up towards 50%, and that at the moment looks like it's going to be very, very difficult to achieve. But we're looking at that. We're going to look at all the scientific papers that have been done on survivability and trawls, and see if there is any changes that perhaps a fisherman could adopt in their methodology and practices that could increase survivability up to that level. If they can do that, and we can prove to the Commission and make a good case, then we might be able to. But at this minute, it would be a less than 50% chance that we'd be able to make a case for trawl caught in F-rops. But we will have one for pot cotton.
The other one is recommendation number 4, and it's, I'm talking about the discard plan technical group. When will that be reporting? The Commission. Is that what you're saying? Or when will that group report the findings?
Yep. Paddy's the
Again,
department's rep on that.
I represent the department on that group. It's a technical group. There's 2 levels of group. There's a technical group made up of experts from different member states. So it involves the Northwestern Waters group. It involves Ireland, Spain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the UK. And the UK has representatives from Scotland, Northern Ireland, and England in that group. The technical group is now completed its work, and it's now gone up to a director level group of senior officials from those nations. And the 2016 discard plan for the demersal fisheries in the Northwestern Waters, that includes the Irish Sea, that report will go to the Commission in June. So they're finalising that report at the moment. But that's just going to be the first stage. That's only going to deal with measures we need to bring into place for 2016. That's likely to be revised in 17-18 up until the final year in 2019, when the industry will have to land everything.
So the discard, I mean, I remember being in Brussels and met Madam whoever she was, I forget her name, but she was confident that the discard problem would be sorted, but that's not the case.
I don't think it is anywhere but sorted. It's going to pose huge problems for us, some of which will be insoluble, possibly.
The concept of what is quite a valuable part of the Northern Irish economy. The prawn fishing is the main fishery in Northern Ireland. Lots of people employed. We employ 160 people in Kilkeel, all based on that Northern Irish fishery. We employ 400 people around the UK, and the Northern Irish fishery is a significant part of that. And the concept of this kind of it's closing after 3 days, that would just be the end of the business and other people who are employed in it. And it's not only kind of our company that would be affected, but there's lots and lots of people who are employed as fishermen and all the services that are servicing that.
I think through the chair, if I can respond to Robbie's question as well, that the headline is there's not one fisherman that I know who wants to discard fish. So the concept, the principle of a discard ban is good. But the discard ban that we've had delivered from the European Union is one that was driven by celebrity chefs and basically Channel 4. There was very little of any scientific assessment of the proposals that was put on the table. And while it did have the support in many ways of the UK government, and while it was delivered under the presidency of the Irish government, increasingly we're seeing right around the EU, as people start to study this pronouncement in detail, that it is full of absolute problems. My fear, Chair, is, yes, number one, what impact there will be on the entire fishing industry. But of equal priority is the impact that this is going to have on the sustainability of the stocks that we have in the Irish Sea. And of course, as Daniel has said, NEFROPS in terms of the local industry is number one. Now, the figures that Paddy Campbell mentioned, that even if it is only 10% of the prawns that are discarded back into the sea, if it's only 10% that survives, that's still 10% that is contributing to a sustainable biomass. And if come the 1st of January 2016, we're not even allowed even to put that 10% back, then the unknown question is what impact will that have on a sustainable biomass?
On the EMFF, you mentioned there briefly, I think that I see a figure of 23 million for Northern Ireland. Was that right?
We've got it's 10% of the UK allocation, and I think it's more like 14 million.
It's the core is 13.28, but the total and everything is for 23.5 million.
Yeah. Do you reckon that is your fair share, and will you be able to do something constructive and positive when you get your hands on it?
Well, to answer the first question first, yes, we do think it's a fair deal. In whatever way you look at the Northern Ireland fishing industry, we are between 5 and 6% of the UK total in terms of landings or in terms of value. So to get 10%, I think is a reasonable deal. In terms of the allocation of the EMF money, the allocation has changed this time around in that it also includes financial support for data collection for the science and stock assessments, and it also includes some financial allocation for the control and enforcement element of the regime. And then the balance, which is just under 14 million, will be used to support a variety of measures to support the industry. There'll be processing measures to support processing and marketing. There'll be vessel modernisation. There'll be help and support for adapting fishing practices under the new CFP reform. So there'll be a variety of different measures, and there'll also be continuing emphasis on the sort of social and wider support for coastal and fishing activities.
Right. Okay. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Maybe I can ask both the department officials and the industry representatives. What, in your opinion, is the single biggest threat to the fishing industry at this time? What is the best way to deal with that or handle that?
Biggest.
What is the single biggest threat to the fishing industry at this time?
Well, I think we've probably been focusing on it, Chairman. It's the implementation of CFP reform, and it's getting a workable system for meeting the obligations for landing all that is caught, and implementing the discard ban. The task force has identified a number of work streams in relation to that, and colleagues will quite rightly point to some of the practical difficulties and the potential economic disadvantages of implementing it. But nevertheless, there's an obligation to do our best to work out a plan that will put into effect the discard ban. So what we're doing is we're focusing on reducing unwanted catches in the first instance. So there's a work programme with active fishermen to look at net profiles and ways and means of reducing the unwanted catches of, for example, whiting and other whitefish. We're also looking at the current estimates of level of discards with a view to going into negotiations with the Commission to get a quota uplift in relation to the level of discards. We want to continue to try and improve our scientific understanding of the stock assessments, particularly of some of those species where up until now maybe we haven't had a full and complete stock assessment available to us. We also need to look at where there are catches of unwanted fish actually landed in the ports, a mechanism for handling and disposing of those. So we've begun some work to look at, well, what is the sort of the quantity of material that we might have to deal with, where those fish are under the I'll call it the minimum landing size. They can't go into the food chain, so they have to go somewhere else. So there's a piece of work to be done just around what we do with that material. Fish meal is one route, but there's a cost and an expense associated with that. And then I suppose we're, after doing all that, we're looking to see whether there can be any degree of flexibility in the implementation ultimately in terms of the discard ban. But I'll let others maybe comment on that question.
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting question, Chairman. Where the biggest single threat comes from. John has very eloquently explained the threat with regard to the landing obligation. I looked down the list of 12 recommendations that have been supplied here, and I looked specifically at number 9. And I remember coming to this committee many times in the early part of the last decade, discussing with the committee the impact upon the Northern Ireland fishing industry of the cod recovery plan. And here we are, after 16 area closures, etc. We're still talking about cod recovery plan, and that's still an ongoing issue. So there are a whole series of challenges, Chairman, and really it's difficult for me to put my finger in any one. Nevertheless, I think it would be wrong to say that those challenges are undermining the industry. Certainly, there always is confidence issues in the industry. But as an organisation, we've made a significant investment over the last 12 months in terms of diversifying into the processing sector. Daniel Whittle, in terms of his company, has made a major investment in Kilkeel in terms of processing. And there's ongoing investments in the fishing industry in terms of the catching sector as well. And that's in the full knowledge of all these challenges that are coming along. And I'll say it again, these challenges do undermine confidence. But as an organisation, we wouldn't be making the investment, and our members wouldn't be making investments if we didn't think there was a future in this industry.
I'd like to endorse that and basically say that the biggest threat from my viewpoint is the uncertainty in the industry and the ability to look ahead and invest wisely. We have got, for one reason or another, a very old fleet in the main, working on marginal economics, and we can't get out of that rut until we've got some certainty of what the future is for us, what we can do in the future, and make the appropriate investments. I mean, we're talking about boats which are 50, 60 years old. They're in no way as efficient as a new-built boat.
Yeah, I fully understand that. It's the same in any industry. If there's no confidence, it doesn't order well for the future. Certainly.
It's okay.
Okay, Andrew, on the question?
First of all, apologies that were held up, so I don't know what has been covered. Can I ask, in relation to the future development or otherwise of the industry, will the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund be available to the Northern Ireland fleet? What negotiations are ongoing at this stage between DARD and Brussels?
The answer to the first question is yes, that EMFF will be operated and be open to applications from the Northern Ireland Fishing Fleet, as was the previous European Fisheries Fund. And there was a very significant number of applications from vessel owners for various work and improvements on board vessels. There was a very significant number of applications and indeed a significant value of grant aid dispersed to the Northern Ireland fleet under EFF. In terms of ongoing negotiations, we are cooperating with the other fishing authorities in the UK, and the operational programme has been submitted to the Commission, and the Commission have come back with a series of questions and points for clarification, and that is a piece of ongoing work that has not yet concluded.
And what sort of share of the cake that would come to the UK would we normally get in relation to that sort of grant aid support for this industry?
In terms of grant aid intensity for the applicants?
Yes. Well, on past experience,
yes,
where you had the European Fisheries Fund before this,
yes, that's correct.
Roughly what percentage of that cake did we get? And are we likely to get more or less of us?
We've got more or less the same. It's a 10% allocation we have secured for EMFF funding.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Probably going to wrap up with, in the past, I was aware that there was decommissioning schemes and all that in the past. Is that an option for the future, or is that necessary for the future in the industry?
It's a potential option for the future. The requirements from the Commission before we would introduce a decommissioning scheme is to present an evidence base that the fishing capacity of the fleet exceeds the fishing opportunities for the fish that they catch. And we have not yet commenced work on that. We plan to do so, but we haven't yet commenced work on that. So it may well be an option for consideration in the future, Chairman.
It's an option that the fleet would look very, very closely at. We hear a lot of requests for decommissioning from the fishing side of the industry. Not always, I must say, supported by the processing side of the industry, but then their business is different from ours. But that would be the biggest single demand of EMFF from the catchers.
I think Chairman, in recommendation number 7 mentions the D word, the decommissioning word. So it certainly is on the table, and the D word featured long and hard in the discussions around the Fisheries Task Force table. As Dick has said, there were processors who were very nervous about taking fishing vessels out of the fleet and potentially undermining the supply of raw material into their factories. Although the historic numbers show that prove that that's not the case. There's been a significant amount of decommissioning, consolidation of the fishing fleet in Northern Ireland over the years, yet the supply has held up remarkably well. And it's like any other industry. Consolidation seems to be the key these days, and the D word is not one that I'm afraid of.
Okay. Any other members? There's no one else. Thank you very much again for your presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Would help.
What sort of money?
Oh, it's 400,000.
Agenda item 7, I think two DART officials are going to speak briefly on this. It's on the pre-consultation European Maritime and Fisheries Fund investment proposals consultation, and I can ask John Spears and Paddy Gamble to give us, the committee, a short briefing on the pre-consultation maybe. And I can refer the briefing paper from the department, pages 85 to 92 of our pack. Thank you.
Chairman, on this occasion, I'm joined by Ronnie McBride, who has been working most closely with the progressing the arrangements for the EMFF, and I think I'll maybe just pass over to him at this point.
Chair, members, my job's slightly easier now that a few things that I had planned to say have been touched on, so I'm not complaining. But basically, it's just to give members an update of where we're at on EMFF. It is a long process, and we're well down the road, but just to bring you up to date with behind the scenes of what we'll plan over the next few weeks. But basically, EMFF is going to succeed EFF, which we still have a number of projects. We have 47 projects that have to incur spend and be completed. We have another 40 we have to do an evaluation before the programme can close. But we reckon that'll go to November, but we are confident that EMFF will have opened by that time. Again, basically, the key initial element was the submission of an operational programme at member state UK level, which the Commissioner are considering against the regulations. They've had a draft OP. We have made 390 changes. The member state to that, and have now formally submitted the operational programme on the 27th of April, and the Commission have 6 months to approve that operational programme. So the club is like a game of chess. It will stop and start when we get information we have to reply back, but we're confident that that will happen by the end of October to allow us to formally open the programme for new applications. John has previously referred to the fact that there is a reduced level of funding, similar to most member states under EMFF. But what we have managed to secure is equivalent to what our spend was on, we call them core projects, the direct support to the industry under EFF. So we are confident that we can deliver a meaningful investment proposal covering the discards, reform common fisheries policy, and also the investments in processing support and other sectors, as well as community-led local development, which was previously known as Axis 4. Our proposals are including all that, and we're coming up to a figure of the 23.5 million European money. When that is national co-financing is added to that, we're talking about a €30 million programme. We had a €36 million programme in the past, but with decommitments and not an N+2 rules, it was around 28.5 million spent. So we are consistent in terms of the future, of what we have, we hopefully hold and can spend wisely. Basically, what we as a division are doing at the minute is that there has been extensive negotiations as such with our fishing industry through the Fishing Industry Task Force, through our newly formed Inshore Fisheries Partnership, and small, more focused groups like the North Coast Lobster Fishermen or Strangford Loch fishing groups. And we have taken on board in our investment plan at the minute, as it's been presented to you on the spreadsheet, of what we believe would be a meaningful investment in every aspect of the fishing sector and the communities over the next 4 to 5 years. What we are currently doing over the next, say, month would be trying to continue to liaise with our fishing representatives and our community representatives to put a bit of meat on the bones of the figures that we've been presented today in terms of narrative, with the aim of having within 4 to 6 weeks a consultation document. And we plan to do a focused consultation with all stakeholders, with the aim of having our proposals amended and approved and agreed, and a business case to be submitted to DFP that will allow us to open if the Commission do approve the programme in October. We're also working behind the scenes to get another thing that Europe requires is a monitoring control system in place to show that we can keep the controls and the audit arrangements in place. Again, that's being drafted at the minute, and Northern Ireland is represented on that panel. We are also, to an extent, to the fore in developing a new IT system. In the past, depending on what administration you were in, you apply to that administration. There's going to be a single system this time that will cover England, Scotland and Northern Ireland applicants. And everything will go through the one section, which means it's going to help reporting, it's going to be more consistency, it's going to help us as administrators, because it is a more complex programme than previously, but also be the fishermen that there's going to be a standardisation of application forms and a simplification of them, which I'm sure if Dick and Alan were here they would appreciate. So basically that's where we're at the minute. Our aim, talking to our default administrations, is to have perhaps, depending on the initial comments from the Commission, to have perhaps a soft launch of the programme in July or August, which is advising of the possibilities when the scheme opens, the programme opens, to advising of the possibilities under the project and offer support to people that would like to hit the board quickly and get applications in, hopefully on the day we open, so that we can get an early decision, so there's no hiatus between EFF and EMFF. And our aim is that in November and December that we would hopefully have all measures and articles open for applications.
Okay. What links do you see between this fund and the Going for Growth and the chapter on the fish and agriculture, not agriculture, but
There are a number of targets in relation to Going for Growth in the fish and aquaculture sector around improving value added and improving export market penetration. And certainly the EMFF has processing and marketing measures associated with it that we see processing companies being eligible to apply for funds on EMFF for new product development, for example, and for assistance in their marketing efforts to develop overseas markets. So there will be support under EMFF in aligned to the targets specified in the Going for Growth strategy.
Chairman, sorry, just in addition to that, what John says is that in our business case, to get the national funds, we have to make sure that it strategically fits to those projects and how it is compatible and complementary to them.
Okay. Kieran, want to question?
Yeah, Chair, just Dick mentioned the fact that the boats that are on the go at the moment are rather dilapidated and gone down. Is there anything, or is that fund there too small to encourage investment in new vessels for the fishing fleet?
Unfortunately, the fund does not allow for the new build of fishing vessels, only the modernisation of existing vessels. It's just banned from Europe. It has been even under EFF. There was a desire to consider a scrap and build the last time, but the European Commission actually specifically rules out anything that increases the potential to catch fish.
Right. And given what you said, is there any incentive for the owners of the boats to take up anything that's going?
Yeah, there's actually, in my opinion, there's slightly more interest this time that under EFF there had to be a 40% grant aid and 60% private contribution. This time the operational programme allows a 50% contribution in grant. So there is a slight encouragement to get a bigger share of grant. We will be liaising with our Seafish colleagues and trying to promote the opportunities, through the outreach programme, through the consultation and beyond. So there will be opportunities there, especially for health and safety, which are of paramount importance at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay. Joe Byrne.
Yeah, Chairman, in relation to, we're roughly going to get about 10% of the total UK grant of 43 million, which we're applying for 23.5 euro million, is that right?
Yeah.
13.7 million is for the core. Now, what does core mean? And the breakdown between fishing vessels and fish processing?
Core basically means what used to be funded through any direct grant support to the industry, your investment on your fishing vessels, your processors, your ports, and under EFF, access for the communities around the ports. So it is direct investment in aquaculture, boats and facilities, and collective actions, which is important in terms of developing the science so that we can make robust cases and decisions to Europe. Very similar to EFF. Last time under EFF, it was 18 million euros.
Yes, but now if you take the core, how they're 13.7 million, what's the breakdown now in the different elements that you just outlined?
Well, again, it's only an initial proposal based on our own views. Again, we'll have to go to consultation, but there are 6 priority axes, as they call them. Used to be called union priorities. Used to be called axes. The one is the first one, 11, will receive an 8 million of the EMFF, being to promote environmentally sustainable, resource-efficient, innovative, competitive, knowledge-based fisheries. So that is directly towards the fishing industry. The second objective relates specifically to aquaculture, and based on what was spent under the last 2 programmes, there's about 1.1 million euros. This is just the European money. There's be a third more when you factor in the national co-financing. The other element of the core is community-led local development, and at the minute we have a ballpark figure, a suggestion of about 1.5 million euros in there. So that would be the 3 basic spinal elements, and processing marketing is the Union Priority 5. So the vast majority, about 70% of the minute, is geared towards the fishing industry.
The fishing industry is a mixture of the catching fleet,
yeah,
the onshore processing.
Yeah, the core element, the 8 million is geared towards the catching sector. Under Union Priority 5, that will be focusing on the processing sector. Again, based on our experience of EFF, we're talking about £1.5 million the last time invested in grants in the industry.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Kieran wants a quick...
Yes, indeed. Chap at the corner mentioned the Strangford Lough fishing, and you know as well as I do that they have been hampered by the net put around by the Europe and the fish. I'm just wondering, and certainly Ronnie, this is a question to you. The last time you and I worked together, I must say we done a tremendous job for Portavogie, and on the back of the Strangford Lough fishing, and hopefully it will come back to what it was prior to the restrictions. We have a small harbour in Kirkcoven that could do with a bit of regeneration. Would you see, or could you see your way and your department's way, or to, as the Strangford Lough fishermen revives, that we could maybe see some investment go into that harbour in Kirkcalban?
We have under EFF, Kieran, funded small ports around the coast, Bally and around Ballycastle, the north coast area, for small improvements. And there is potential to do that if it is can classify it as a fishing-related harbour. The other option would be through looking at the wider community-led local regeneration of the likes of Kirkcalban to add on to what's in there, I say, for tourists and recreational, because part of the EMFF is to promote the welfare and the benefits to the wider community as well as the fishing industry. We can't say it will be part of the strategy, it will be this flag, we'll develop that, but certainly it's something that we would have to consider if there was a strong case made for it.
That's very good. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 8. We have an oral briefing from the UFU on cattle ID and cross compliance. And I refer members to the correspondence from the UFU at pages 94 to 95, and correspondence from the department on the issue of cross compliance at pages 97 to 08. Can I welcome Ian Marshall, the President, Ian Buchanan, Hill Farming Policy Chair, Crosby Cleland, Beef and Lamb Policy Chair, and Elliot Bell, Policy Officer, Beef and Lamb Hill Farming. You're very welcome. And can we just ask you to make your presentation, and then we can ask some questions after that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks to the committee for taking the time and give us the opportunity to give you this brief. It's certainly it's a major concern for the agricultural industry at the moment. And over the last few months, we have consulted widely with both our membership and the wider industry on this very important issue. And that being said, there's clear and fervent view from our committees and from the industry that the proposal currently on the table from the Department of Agriculture to revise or relax their current penalty matrix is completely unacceptable and does in no way come close to the more tolerable attitude and standards which are applied in neighbouring parts of the UK or in the Republic of Ireland for that matter. Before I can outline our concerns about the Darn Cattle ID cross-compliance penalty matrix which is currently being enforced, I think it's important to set in place the issues relating to the tag replacement in context. Over the last number of years, in excess of 200,000 cattle replacement tags have been purchased by farmers, cost of over £700,000 per annum, which is significant and it's concerning. And at the very minimum, that means that between 6 to 8% of cattle tags are replaced in Northern Ireland each year. While it seems a fairly low figure, it's actually 50% higher than our counterparts in the south of Ireland, so it's a major concern. There's a strong view from our membership that there's considerable variation in both the quality of the tags that are currently available in Northern Ireland, and while there are good quality tags on the market, there are certainly some more inferior product on the market, and that's a concern, because ultimately DARD are the body that are approving these tags and giving the farmers access to purchase these. With these facts in mind, it's understandable to see how farmers feel quite aggrieved that DARD's decision to introduce a threshold for the loss of single tags is a serious concern. Previously in Northern Ireland we had 28 days to replace missing tags before any penalty was applied. However, the threshold which the Department introduced in January 2014 stipulated that where 10% or 20 tags, single missing tags, are found at inspection, this will automatically be a breach of your cross-compliance. Changes that were first discussed with both ourselves and the Farmers Union and NIAPA at a DARG stakeholder meeting in May last year, and following consideration by UFU livestock committees, there's been significant objection by farmers who consider this another example of DARG's desire to gold-plate our European standards. What makes farmers all the more aggrieved by the changes DARD have made is the fact that it's not something that is required in any European regulation. The decision to change this penalty matrix has actually been based on a 6-year-old Commission guidance document. In cases where single missing tags are identified, the Commission guidance states that, in general, no cross-compliance reduction should be applied as long as the loss rate in the holding concerned is within normal limits. The Commission defines these normal limits as taking into account the situation usually found in comparable herds and rearing conditions. Now, taking this guidance into account, 2 points must be considered. How can the Department set a generic threshold of 10% or 20 tags when the number of cattle within each 20,000 of the 20,000 herds in Northern Ireland varies considerably? and certainly this is a clear indication that it's discriminatory against large herd owners. Secondly, rearing conditions within a closed herd and a flying herd where the cattle are brought in are completely different. In a situation of a closed herd, the herd owner, herd keeper has full control over a tag replacement policy from birth to slaughter. That means how often tags are checked, how often tags are ordered, tags replaced, and what part, and in fact the ear of the animal's ear the animal gets the tag in. Whereas in the case of a flying herd where animals are purchased in, the herd owner has no control over the quality of the tag in the animal's ear or subsequent loss of these tags, and there's certainly much higher risk in a flying herd to manage this and work within fairly tight and onerous thresholds. Further this, the Commission guidance states that the keeper is responsible to replace the lost ear tags in a deadline set up by the national legislation if the keeper has taken in due time the appropriate measures to obtain replacement tags. This can be taken into account to support a decision of no reduction. Where DARD has decided that all herds that exceed the threshold should have a breach applied, the Commission have stated that where a region can see evidence that the herd has an adequate tag replacement policy, no reduction should be applied. Given that the DARD APHIS system allows DARD to monitor the replacement rate of tags within a herd, surely this should provide enough evidence that a herd keeper is taking sufficient action to replace missing tags rather than simply using a generic threshold. When DARD last briefed this committee on this issue in January, they made specific reference to a term, namely several, and how the Commission have stated it only in cases where one or several animals have missing tags that no reduction should be applied. The fact that DARD have used this term to justify their position, we believe, puts them in a very, very weak position. The Oxford Dictionary describes several as being more than two, but not many. We don't think it's unreasonable to ask the Department what their definition of many is. As we understand it, the definition of many is a large number of. So I think the reference to 10% or 20 tags is a bit more specific than a large number of. If DARD are going to be particular about definitions in a document that's nothing more than a guidance document, the definition of many is very important because it will depend on circumstances which are presented. In the case we first highlighted to this committee and the department, there was a herd of 674 cattle with 23 single missing tags. And if you do the mathematics on that, that equates to 1.7%, which in our opinion certainly is not many, but could put this farmer in a position where he faces a serious financial penalty as a consequence. So in conclusion, to draw this presentation to a conclusion, DARD has proposed that the already implemented relaxations to their penalty matrix for issues relating to cattle ID cross-compliance. However, the last committee meeting where they briefed you, they neglected to explain to you that any breach by any inspector on a farm will in future increase the risk level that DARD perceive there to be in that farm business. There will be a higher level of scrutiny for that business and a greater chance of re-inspection as a consequence. If a re-inspection takes place, there is potential for farmers to once again fall foul of the ridiculous and wholly impractical thresholds, let alone have to deal with the burden and fallout of these difficult proceedings. Overall, it's our view that it's completely unacceptable that DARD has taken an approach which has put herd keepers in Northern Ireland at a distinct disadvantage, not only to our neighbouring regions in the UK and Ireland, but many other regions within Europe. And it's very difficult to understand why neighbouring regions in the UK and Ireland have managed to adopt a mechanism which demonstrates much greater flexibility while satisfying the Commission. And remember, if we're south of Ireland at the minute and you have a missing tag, you've got actually 3 months to replace that tag. Yet in Northern Ireland, when we have the most sophisticated livestock traceability system in Europe, in the form of APHIS, and where these cattle with a single missing tag are in fact completely still fully traceable, even this is not good enough for DARD, and they instead continue to gold plate and fail to demonstrate any balance between what's practical for farmers and what appears to be acceptable to the Commission and all other European regions. To conclude, we would like to again thank you for the opportunity of listening to us hearing this brief, because it's a very serious issue for livestock farmers and it's posing massive financial penalties on many of our herd owners. And if I could ask you just if you consider agreeing with the position on this union that the complete removal of this threshold that DARD has imposed, because we are seriously disadvantaged and it is not practical, it's not fair, and it's an overzealous approach to implementation of rules and regulations. And that DARD, as a matter of urgency, publishes the AFBI research on the cattle tag performance in Northern Ireland, which should be nearing completion, because we think that's an important piece of work. And thirdly, that DARD overhaul their standards for allowing companies to sell poor quality tags in Northern Ireland, because if they're going to impose thresholds and penalties, then it's not unreasonable for an industry to expect that the tags that we have to use are all of a standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I declare an interest in a farmer myself and having to replace tags on a regular basis, so I fully understand the situation. You raised a number of concerns regarding the revised approach that DART has taken on this issue. And I'm sure you've spoken to DART. What response have you got from DART in regard to this when you have spoke to them?
Well, I think the response we've got from DART, Chair, is frustrating. It's disappointing in that they feel that it's perfectly justified and reasonable. Yet, whilst we look around our neighbours, we've never seen a similar attitude or approach. So they don't feel that they've done anything wrong. They actually feel that any relaxation of this is good, and we should, as an industry, applaud them for this relaxation. However, we feel it still falls terribly short of what's necessary.
Yeah. I think this committee has had concerns on this issue, and I myself would see his concerns, because I think it's discriminatory to a point, because someone has 200 cattle and they've 20 missing tags, or someone has 1,000 cattle and they're fined if they've 20 missing tags or 22 or 3. I mean, it certainly is discriminatory in nature. You have looked at, in your presentation, you have looked at other areas, the regions, the UK and the Republic, and they have more or less, isn't that right?
They have indeed.
Okay. I'm going to ask Joe to ask the question there, Joe Breen.
Chairman, again, welcome to Ian and the delegation. Why, Ian, do you think are DART being so particular about and being so stringent in this regard? Is it because there has been a history of difficulties that are different for other regions, or are we having an overzealous department?
I think there are serious concerns with the department's attitude, which bearing in mind, hark back to a time when GB had an audit, and actually as a result of that audit, which there were no concerns highlighted, the DART felt, and it was in a climate of fear of audits, that they applied these thresholds. I think, Elliot, you had looked at some detail at that. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think they have taken an ultra precautionary route by introducing this threshold. I think even if you compare Northern Ireland with the rest of the UK, or either in Southern Ireland, we have the most advanced traceability system there is in the British Isles with the APHIS. As the President pointed out in his presentation, these cattle still have a single missing tag in their ear. They're still fully traceable, and DART can also, on the APHIS, check how often a farmer is replacing their tags. Those are three key factors you would have thought in proving the traceability of the animal. Yet, even at that, DART are not satisfied with that, and they feel that they have needed to introduce these extra thresholds, which we think are extremely unfair, given that the quality of tags that they're selling or approving for the market are not at a satisfactory level. It's very difficult for us to say which tag manufacturers are the best and which aren't. There's no firm evidence to show that, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence from farmers that they're not satisfied with the current tags that are on the market, and they feel that DART needs to improve the standard of them. There are tags that are very good, but there are equally tags which are very poor, and we don't think that that's acceptable if they are going to try and impose such stringent cross-compliance rules.
Chairman, your answer or comment is leading me to my next question. In terms of the tags that are approved by DART, is it from one company or a number of companies? What's the situation?
Well, at the minute, DART have asked AFTI to do a study on cattle tags performance in Northern Ireland, and it's my understanding that information from that study is based on APHIS records. They are looking at each of the companies that sell tags in Northern Ireland, and from that study they'll be able to identify who is the best and who is the worst. We think that information should be made public to farmers as soon as possible, and we think that that study is not far away from completion. So again, as the President said there, it's something that we would ask you to press firmly with Dard on to make sure that farmers are aware of those who are selling good tags and those who are clearly not.
And finally, Chairman, in relation to the AFBI survey of tags, how much consultation were with you guys, the farming organisations? Did you have any input into the discussions and be able to offer any views on the type of tag or otherwise that you would like to see?
Well, we met with Dard early December last year, Dard and AFBI, and we had a bit of a discussion around the study that AFBI are doing. We have had no input to the study as such, but largely the study has been conducted. It's a desktop study. It's been conducted using data from APHIS, and that's as far as it's gone. Apart from that, we haven't been consulted in any way.
Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, Sidney Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ian, and your team for your presentation today. You was taking up some of the points that I was interested in, the quality of these tags. How many different brands would you say, from your experience, is on the market, let's say, in Northern Ireland? Do we have the place of wife with them, like?
There'd be about 10 to a dozen, I would say, in around that. I can certainly get you those figures, but off the top of my head, I think it's about in around that sort of 10 to a dozen different.
Are these manufactured locally, or are they imported, or
combination?
Where do we get them from?
A combination.
All combination.
Yeah.
What would encourage then the qualities is? Would farmers be encouraged to buy the less quality ones if is the cost implication here?
There's not much of a cost difference. It's generally more local availability. If you have a local tag store, you're more inclined to go to them because it's quicker to get them from them, and you can get that replacement fairly readily. You can order them online. There's an awful lot of places you can buy them from, but ultimately the standard which has to be met is set by DEFRA, and then Dard act from that. And we don't think that standard is set high enough, because clearly at the minute there are those good quality tags that are meeting that standard easily, but there's also those tags which...
So those 10 or 12 different manufactured tags are meeting standards as set down?
They're meeting the DEFRA and Dard standard, but whether they're meeting the standard that that farmers require to ensure compliance with European regulations is another story. So the standard that is currently there perhaps isn't good enough in farmers' minds.
From your experience in a score, say 1 to 10, what's the difference, say, between the qualities of these? Is there some really poor tags and some really good ones? Is there some... I'm trying to get... Is a lot of the reason for losing these tags down to really the quality of them, that if everyone was to use the best quality you could get, that it would go some way to reducing cost of these tags?
Well, as an example, in Southern Ireland, they have a single tag manufacturer, and their replacement rate per annum is about 4%, whereas we could have a selection of 10 to 12 different tag manufacturers, and our replacement rate is between 6 and 8%. So when you look at the bigger numbers, there's a considerable difference there, which I think demonstrates that the Republic, they have a very good tag manufacturer, whereas we have a multitude of tag manufacturers and some of them aren't very good at all.
You talk about the 28 days to replace the tags compared to in the Republic. I think you said 3 months, was it?
Used to be.
I find that would be significant. That would be go a long way into assisting you.
The old regime was 28 days before it tightened up suddenly.
Right, okay.
And now it's tightened up to zero tolerance, basically.
Zero tolerance.
But down south it's 3 months.
It's still 3 months?
Yes.
Okay, so that's an area that certainly would need to be looked at as well. And we're working on a 6-year penalty matrix, you say? Is that
Yeah, well, actually,
matrix, is it?
it's based on a document, that a Commission document that's now
Commission
6 years old, and I think we all have serious concerns about tag quality and tag issues, but the more important issue here is actually that in a time when our department have actually autonomy to work with an industry and get us through this, which is a requirement, a legislative requirement, that actually they are being more overzealous here, and they are imposing tighter rules and regulations on Northern Ireland farmers, which is not necessary. Because when we look at it, it's not something that's required in European regulation. So that's a serious concern, because we all accept that you're going to have variable tag quality, especially when you have a large number of suppliers, unlike the south. However, that being said, if there was a pragmatic approach to applying the rules and regulations, as is in other member states, the industry would deal with this. But it's certainly a concern at the minute.
A level playing field for the different member states.
And maybe just to add to that, as we've outlined already, and as the committee know, the threshold in Northern Ireland is 10% or 20 single missing tags in total. In Scotland, they have a threshold of 16%, and there's no or. It's 16%. So that's their threshold. England and Wales, they have no threshold whatsoever, and the Republic of Ireland have a very flexible system as well. So.
But I tend to agree with you. The percentage is irrelevant when you go into the bigger herds. When you talk about sort of 20 sort of single tags. So really, the percentage is really out the window, and it doesn't make, as you said quite rightly, Chair. So certainly, I see your point coming from there. But thank you very much for your comments, and certainly it's enlightened me greatly on a number of issues here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just in financial terms, the penalties that comes on to the farmer if they, if the tags aren't there. How big a problem do you see this? How detrimental do you see this to the farming community and to the agriculture industry in financial terms, Anthony?
Well, this is huge. This is serious, and the whole cross compliance issue itself is a minefield. But that being said, there's a penalty matrix that, dependent, and this is where it's completely unfair, that depending on the size and scale of your business, depending on the size of your single farm payment, depending on the nature of the offence, whether it's deemed as a negligent or intentional offence, then we have seen financial penalties on farm businesses in tens of thousands because of a single tag that wasn't replaced. So it's huge. And actually, as Elliot rightly indicated, the focus by the Commission has been it's about livestock traceability, it's about public health with regard to food safety. Yet when an animal still has a second tag in its ear, there is no public health issue here, there is no traceability issue. It's not an unidentified animal, it's an animal merely with one plastic tag missing. And we've defended cases for our members, and it's been in tens of thousands.
Yeah, would it be a bit cynical of me to think that this is the way the department has of getting money back off the farmer?
I wouldn't like to comment or share your cynicism, but it has crossed my mind.
That's what this bedroom
Go on, Dob.
No put, Tom. Thank you, Chair. Apologies for missing your briefing. I was doing a question. Suppose I might declare an interest in my husband's a beef and cereal farmer. Ian, in your letter, which I've read in detail, I think you totally hit the nail on the head. And I know too well a constituent of mine that shot himself because of a cross-compliance inspection, and miraculously, thank God, he survived. But such is the pressure on farmers. It's not fraud, it's not animal welfare, it's not cruelty issue, it's certainly not negligence. Yet the department persists with gold plating, and that I would agree with Tom Buchanan's final point, certainly in that way. I know you've outlined you've started outlining the major difference between DARD's approach and those in the Republic. Is there anything further we're missing, or, obviously there's a willingness to help and assist the farmers in the Republic that seems to be lacking here. Is there anything else you can do to outline the differences, other than time span and those issues with placing tags?
I think this issue, this is something that is not just in isolation with regard to animal identification. We see this in other areas of department function where they refer back to Commission rules and regulations and the reason why things have to be so onerous and difficult. Yet there's a clear demonstration here, Joanne, that there actually is a mechanism to make something that's more practical and a more common sense approach to work with the industry as opposed to work in conflict with the industry. So certainly we're disappointed, because when we do look south of the border, there's a completely different attitude to working with industry.
And a different mindset.
Completely,
for
yeah.
working.
Yeah, very
So,
much.
yeah, okay. I know the very nature of it, and Elliot has touched on it, and I like the way you spell your name, because it's my son's name too. Sorry, Chair. And the very nature of the tags, as Elliot has said, is that it's inevitable that a small percentage will go missing, and you talked about the traceability, and Ian mentioned as well. But I think here DARD's definition of small is crucial. You know, is this another example of DARD simply creating work for themselves, as Thomas said, and to heck with the personal consequences of farmers and their families? Would that be a note? Ian, your comment was the whole cross-compliance system is a minefield. I couldn't put it any better myself. So is this them creating work for themselves, not thinking of the consequences and the heck with the farmers?
I think, Joanne, the problem here is where in Northern Ireland we have a culture of being risk averse, because the fear or threat of audits or Big Brother looking over our shoulder seems to be a bigger threat to our department than the threat of the industry not being able to cope with or deal with rules and regulations. So there's no aptitude in there for accepting that actually it could be simpler, it could be much more straightforward with no detrimental impact on the industry. So I think it's very much a case of risk aversion, as opposed to accepting they have the autonomy to do things in a more pragmatic, simpler way for the industry.
How do you change that mindset? It doesn't seem to be getting through, because I know you say you made recommendations last November last year. Have the department given you any indication of a willingness to work with you, the union, on this? Because you are the voice of the farmers, and farmers need to be heard, and they need to know that somewhere someone is listening to the concerns rather than falling on a deaf ear time and time again.
Yeah, well, certainly we have some of those meetings, they pay lip service to the fact that it could be better, yet when we come to making significant changes at farm level, at primary production level, there doesn't seem to be an appetite for making real differences, real significant changes. And I think that's the frustration, that everyone says they are willing to do things differently, and they see the difficulties, they see the problems, yet
they're not followed through.
We continue to go back to members, and it's very much a case of no change.
And it's frustrating for us and frustrating for yourselves. What's your next step then? You mentioned potential legal action. Where do you go from here? Because I'm mindful we're about to have the Balmoral show, and it's something that we will certainly be asked time and time again, that certainly as a committee and yourselves, what are we doing, or what can we do to stop this stranglehold on the farmers?
Well, I think with this brief today to the committee is very much about making the committee aware of this issue and the cost, the significant cost to the industry that we have because of this, and to ask this committee for your support in applying pressure to the department, because this is something we feel that you as a committee can deliver on, and actually apply pressure to them to say, look, this shouldn't be, this is not necessary. And I sit on the Agri-Food Strategy Board, and it's difficult to see how, when we're trying to create and grow an industry and encourage a sense of people wanting to grow and develop and seize opportunity, that when there is something here we can make the job simpler and more straightforward, that we don't seize the chance and do that and help the industry. And it's something that in our opinion, the union's opinion, there is no risk for our department here, so why would they not do it?
A potential legal action, you didn't answer that one. As a union, do you say that? No. Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Alderman Mullin.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. Why is there less manufacturers in the south than there is here?
Well, it's a completely different approach to the south and how they procure their tags. Crosby, do you want to experience of that?
No, I don't actually. It's more the sheep angle that would have that, but I think it was they looked at all the tags, they came together and the numbers, and it was the most economical and the best. They chose it, and it was the better one.
They basically put out a tender for a single tag manufacturer to supply the industry. Allflex was a successful company in that tender, and as such they have got that contract.
But am I correct in saying that they don't allow any suppliers from the north to tender for that?
Yeah.
So it's really a closed shop. So something has to be done about that. You know, it's a double-edged sword here. I think that's one of the things that needs to come out when we're talking about cattle tags. their refusal to let manufacturers into the south buy them. They let sheep tags in.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that one. I think it's possibly a brand. Not so much the manufacturer that picked the brand. I'm not sure that they're actually manufactured in the south, actually. I think they're a brand.
Yeah, I think you're right when you talk about a brand, but they let sheep tags in from the north, they don't let cattle tags in. So I think that's could be part of the problem. And I'll take on board what you said today. Thank you.
Okay. Joe Byrne.
Chairman, I wonder can I raise another issue, given that the union are here. You know the whole issue about the labelling for sheep meat and string lambs. This has caused massive frustration and cost to farmers over recent times. We've had a history of so many string lambs traditionally being sold in the market here for the southern processor. Obviously, there's the double whammy of the euro differential with sterling, and secondly, there's the labelling. And I wonder, Ian, if you have any comment to make on it. Are we making any progress with the department? And I have raised this issue with the Minister because I believe there needs to be strong, meaningful discussions with their counterpart, Simon Coveney. Softly phone calls don't work.
Not a problem, Joe. We are seriously concerned about where this whole labelling thing has taken us. And the fact is, it's not just specific to the sheep meat lamb markets. It's also having an impact on our red meat industry, on dairy, and could potentially impact pork. So it is a major concern because, as we see it, very often it's just used as a mechanism to drive price down. It was highlighted to us that it was French traders who were actually concerned about the British or Irish label. Yet when I was in Portugal at the COPA meeting a fortnight ago, I asked the French farming industry about what their attitude was, and they said they had no concern whether it was British or Irish lamb because the quality was the same. So yet again, it's another demonstration of the industry at either international marketing or at processor level to use this as a stick to beat us with. We firmly believe that the trade between products north and south is vital, it's crucial for the agricultural industry. I know Crosby and Elliott and Ian were in Dublin 2 weeks ago with Eddie Downey. Crosby, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, we'll take last week an example. The difference between last year and this year was £18 a lamb. Now, the euro really covers maximum £8 of that. And that's what we're coming at ABP and Dumbia and Linden would be our main plants. Now, Linden would have a link with Navan, ICM. It really baffles us why that £10. I think it's been used, the labelling idea has been used. We come forward with another idea of reared NI, processed I, because they were trying to say, the French were saying, oh, well, if it comes through to England and Ireland, why, with the UK? That's a myth. Now, we've come at the processor and actually blame their sellers, because they have been wound. And there's a phrase that they use, and I don't know if you're allowed to say it here, but I know one of them was caught off guard one day and said, why do you take advantage of the situation with the sheep man? I just said, because we can. And that's the unfortunate side we're in, being at the end of the line. We have to take what we're given, but these prices have been manipulated, and I'm personally, I think that's maybe personal opinion, is that this has been manipulated to get things down. Now, already this week, we got it up to 390 last week on the spring. In the mainland, we're talking about 430. Now, over last year, from May right through to the middle of July, there's 40 and 60 pence a difference a kilo. And that's a lot when you take the lamb. If you take the 60 pence, that's £12 a lamb. But that's sitting between it. There was a lot of lambs stayed north last year. They killed up to 14,000 some weeks. And there was only about 3,000 went south. After the July period, it broke even, and then it got bigger in the south because the southern plants opened up. Now, we are just mystified why this happens. You can put any sort of accusation in there, but we're baffled by that. The plants here can handle more lamb. They just take another day to do it, and they've said they would. But it's the price that's hitting the farmer, and I think that's the bit that we would like. I don't know what you do to try to get control of that. We're at the wrong end of the line.
I'd say we have the National Sheep Association doing a presentation to next week's committee on the issue. Okay.
Thanks.
Right, Joe. Can I say, would the union feel that a threshold would be enough to suffice in this situation if the department would give a time frame as it did in the past?
Well, through the Chair, we personally feel that a threshold is actually unnecessary. Yeah. We feel that actually there's a mechanism here to say that we have the most robust traceability system in Europe. We have APHIS. We're actually due in the next couple of years potentially get a successor, which is NIFAS, which will be a better system, hopefully. And that being said, we have that. We have a completely traceable animal identification system, and we feel that where an animal actually loses a single tag, it should not apply a breach immediately. There should be a time frame to replace the tag, and then subsequently, after a 3-month period, if the farmer hasn't replaced the tag, well then it's hard for us as a union to defend at that point a breach. But that's not what we're asking for. We just feel that we need a degree of tolerance here to say if an animal has a single missing tag, it should not qualify for an immediate breach to your single farm payment, and there should be a reasonable time frame to given to replace a tag. And that's what we need, and it's only giving us parity with other regions. It's not doing anything or giving Northern Ireland special treatment.
Okay, I think in the past actually there's 28 days to acquire the tag. You hadn't to have it in the animal's ear actually, as long as you purchase the tag within 28 days, if I recall right. No, that's okay. We will provide Hansard, the department, Hansard of this meeting, and we will be asking the department to come before the committee to address the issue. Is that okay? And we certainly have concerns as well as yourselves, so we know the issue, and something we will push. Okay?
Thank you for your time, and certainly there's a lot of detail in there, and I think Elliot quite happy to email to the committee the copy of the detail there, because there's a lot of facts and figures in there.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 9, written briefing from DARD on SL1, the less favoured area compensatory allowances amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2015. Can I refer members to the papers from the department at pages 110 to 118? Members will be aware that the LFSCA scheme is a measure to support farmers in areas which are considered to be naturally less favoured, such as hill farms. It is a compensation for a lower return from farming in such areas. The regulations will provide for this year's annual payment. Regulations also stipulate the department's power of recovery in relation to monies paid to those who have breached the scheme's rules and provide for interest to be recovered. The department considers the wording of Regulation 11.3 LFACA 2015 SR to be at odds with the intention of the new European legislation, which provides beneficiaries with up to a 60-day interest-free window from the date of the recovery order to make repayments. Therefore, the department wishes to make a minor technical amendment in order to clarify the position with regard to the interest-free period. The rule is anticipated to be introduced on the 4th of June 2015. Can I seek members' comments? In essence, what this means is a 60-day interest-free. Is that what it said? No? Can you pronounce what provides?
The intention provides beneficiaries with an up to 60-day interest-free window from the date of recovery order, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I...
Yeah.
60 days interest-free.
To make the repayment.
To make the repayment. And obviously after 60 days, they're going to be looking at interest. Not that the department pays farmers interest whenever they're late in paying. Can I put this, are members content that the regulations move to the next legislative stage on this?
10.
Okay. Agenda item 10, written briefing DARD EU Animal Health Regulation and Official Control Regulation. Can I refer members to the papers from the department at pages 120 to 128? Can I advise members that in 2013 the European Commission published proposals with the aim of strengthening standards across the agri-food chain. This included a new regulation on animal health and plant reproductive material, which would create a modernised, simplified and risk-based approach to protecting health with more efficient controls to ensure the effective application of food chain rules. The Animal Health Regulation will set down the principles of European animal health for the next 20 years. The Department advises that they think the new regulation should focus on the outcomes to be achieved rather than the process, and should target controls at the highest risk. Negotiations on the base text of the regulation are anticipated to conclude in mid-2015, followed by a 5-year transition period. The official controls regulations will build on the existing provisions that set out how Member States should approach official controls, with the most controversial element of the Commission's proposals being mandatory charging to be extended to all sectors. Can I seek comments from members on this? Something I think we need to look at closely, is it?
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, what they're saying here is that there will be charges for some possibly testing. Is that what they're telling us? So we need to be very careful on this.
Page 127 and 128, you'll see it there.
127, 128. Does anyone want to have a quick look at that before? I think it's something we need to keep an eye on.
To ask for further written briefings as it is.
Yeah, I think we should on that, because that could be a big
Would be
issue.
concerning if further charging, yeah.
Yeah, I think some areas, other areas are charges for TB tests and all, and that's where we need to be careful, yeah. Okay, members?
Will that be next week with us, or written briefing on that?
I'll check a time scale for you. Okay.
Give us more time to scrutinise it, yeah.
Agenda item 11, correspondence. Can I refer members to the correspondence received at pages 132 to 154. Can I draw members' attention to one item on page 150, which is a request from the RSPB to present to the Committee on the Land Matters Task Force. Are members content to schedule a briefing with the RSPB on the issue?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
Are members then content to action the remainder of correspondence as suggested in the index sheet at pages 130 and 131? Agenda item 12, Forward Work Programme. Can I refer members to the Forward Work Programme on pages 156 to 160? Can I advise members that the EU Commissioner's Office has advised that Commissioner Hogan has no availability in his diary to meet with the Committee in Brussels in the near future, and that his diary is blocked out up to October. His office, however, are happy to host the committee if we decide to go ahead with the visit. Tom Tynan, who accompanied the Commissioner during the visit here, can ensure that key people from DG, AG or I will be available for meetings. And I seek the opinion of members that wish to go to Brussels on the new proposed arrangement. And when were we proposing to go?
Well, the committee were hoping to go in June, but the Commissioner is not available. A lot of trade missions, I think, particularly to China and Japan and the States. I know that was the centrepiece of the committee, wanted to be the centrepiece of their visit, so it's whether you want to go ahead in June, or if you leave it to autumn, then I think this committee is going to be busy with 2 new bills and its inquiry and coming to the end of the mandate, and so it's up to yourselves. It might be you still haven't, put together a programme or anything, because the Commissioner was the programme looks light, but that's because we've still got lots of things to put in yet. So
yes, it's only next week number things to look at. Yeah.
Chairman, obviously we would have liked to be able to see the Commissioner if we were going there, but obviously if his DG staff over there, the experts, then it may be some merit. Would there be any other thing on at the same time when we would go there? Would it be a conference or anything, or would it be a case of us going? Those Farmers Union officers, those in the Commission,
and the MEPs, that would be basically it. Yeah.
You want to make sure it's worthwhile. We just don't want to go on for the sake of going.
No.
If we're all quite busy.
Just to be aware, they're not on now, but next week there's 3 requests in for visits. So if you go to Brussels, you're probably not going to be able to do many of those. And you have 3 visits scheduled also for the autumn term already. So you have to make a decision. But
it would need to be worthwhile. There would need to be a programme.
Yeah, there's no point in going for the sake of going.
Okay. So do you want us to work a programme up and you can have a look at it then, without the Commissioner in it? There'll be things that you'd like to see, you know, just maybe get a briefing on that animal health regulation, get a briefing on EU food labelling. There would be 2 good briefings. Get a briefing on CAP simplification.
Look at it and then we can decide finally. Is that okay? Okay. I'm sorry for giving you bother.
No,
Was there
I think we need to.
dates in mind for it?
Well, we looked at June, and looking at the last time that we went, rather than go out on Tuesday night, we'd just go on the Wednesday. So you'd be arriving there Wednesday morning, you'd have meetings Wednesday morning, late Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, and then you'd have that sort of couple of hours free before you returned home again on Thursday.
So it's quite a busy schedule. You're in the middle of the night.
It is. Yeah. It is a bit of schedule. And we'd obviously try and make sure that the MEPs, that you met with the MEPs, and sometimes it's not easy to get them all there as well. The CAP simplification, EU food labelling, and animal health. As your and regulation, better regulation. That's your. Yeah. That's 4 focuses. Is that fine? We can see we can set that up, and a meeting with the MEPs. And also, did you say you wanted to go to the farmers' unions?
I think yes. Given that the farmers' union have a big coterie of people there, we certainly should be seeing.
Okay, well that's like 3 half days of good solid visits. I think that's okay. Well, I'll see what I can. We can work out. It might take us a couple of weeks to get something worked out, and we'll get back to you on it then. Okay.
I also remind members that it has been agreed to forward case studies on CAP to the clerk, who would in turn forward them to the Commissioner for his information. To date, no case studies have been received. Can I ask members to do so by the end of the week? Otherwise, we will assume and they'll return. Okay. I remind members of the breakfast event on the 20th of May 2015 in the office of the Rural Community Network, Cookstown. This is an event arranged by the Assembly Community Connect and the third sector leaders along with the Rural Community Network. This will be followed by a committee meeting. Details of the breakfast event will issue in due course. Is that on a Tuesday?
Yeah, that's on a Thursday.
Thursday.
It's just to make you previously agreed that just make sure it's in your diaries.
Email round again then?
I'll email it round again, yeah.
Do that. Can I seek agreement then for the forward work programme? Okay.
And just to say the reason why I said, because we're going to discuss the better regulation, hopefully sign off the terms of reference now, closed session. And once you've done that, I'll start to slot witnesses in on it. So the programme is not finalised yet. That's
Agenda item 13. Any other business, members? Under Nope. Agenda item 14. Date and time of next meeting. The next meeting of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development will take place on Tuesday, the 19th of May 2015 at 1:30 p.m. in room 30 Parliament Buildings. We want to go into closed session now for a few minutes. And,
this is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.